I'd like to call tonight's public hearing on April 27, 2015 to order. I'm hearing some feedback there in the back. We'll start today with City Planner's report. This is zoning amendment bylaw number 3362, 2015 regarding 1433 India Avenue. Welcome, Mr. Cricket.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The subject of tonight's public hearing is rezoning application at 1433 India Avenue. In the past 3 times that this subject was before you, Your Worship, we've provided a number of different elevations and floor plans. I have selected these 2 for tonight's presentation. They're essentially architect's renderings of the property that I will also use in development permit. This is the final product, and this is the final site plan. The property is this is the zoning bylaw, amending bylaw, which I will not turn around, but simply shows the location of the property in relation to the text, which is in your attachment number 2. The property is located at the edge of our footprint. The neighborhood is generally 1950 to 1970 era, and the church is 1972. The official community plan designates the area, this is the subject area, designates the subject area as residential, and the zoning bylaw zones the property R2, and therefore the application to amend the zoning bylaw in order to accommodate the project that's proposed at that location. This essentially concludes the visual part of the presentation. I will quickly go over our analysis. The staff considered traffic volumes and concluded that not significant impact will be felt. The staff considered densification, essentially retaining the development within community footprint, which is the underpinning of a quality official community plan. The planning for major projects is another aspect that we looked at, and in this situation is beneficial, as it will reduce the potential for low vacancy rates. In respect to permitted uses, specifically relating to the intent of developing a boarding house and the subsequent seniors housing, there are 2 points to that element. One is that the words in the applicant's application are simply based on applicant's business model, and the purpose to amend for the proposed amendment to RM3 multiple family residential is it allows for both of those uses. The applicant held an information meeting on March 4th and also spoke to the council on April 13th in regards to the future uses, including construction standards suitable for seniors and variety of items concerning market demand. The internal referrals by engineering department is included in your attachment number 6. In brief, there are things that the applicant is asked to complete and committed to complete, and those specific items can be held until the construction stage, at which time the occupancy permit will not be issued until all of the works are completed. The Ministry of Highways and Transportation signed off copy of the bylaw is included in your attachment number 7. As at the time of preparing this report, I didn't have any public comments. Since then, we received 2. I believe you received copies of it, and I will read them for the public hearing record, Your Worship. On April 21st, I received a letter which reads, I am the owner of 1123 Frederick Street, that is near the property number 1433 India Avenue, which was zoned R2 when the population of Prince Rupert was 20,000. Today, population in Prince Rupert has decreased to 12,000, so there is no reason to rezone R3 multiple family residents, and this rezoning does not bring any more money to the city. I urge City Council to protect the properties in the neighborhood by keeping property zone R2 to family residential. A property adjacent to 1123 Frederick Street was zone R2 for side-by-side duplex, but it has become a fourplex. Keep the property at 1433 India Avenue as R2 family residential. That makes sense, and we do not want to pile humans like sardines. I hope City Council does not vote to degrade our neighborhood. Respect and honor council of the time when it was zoned for 1433 India Avenue as R2. The same individual actually submitted another letter fairly early in the process, immediately after the first reading on February 12th, and it reads to the City Council. Oh, by the way, for the record, that letter is from Antonio Ferreira, and the corporate administrator has copies which can be attached to the public hearing records. The next letter reads to City Planner and to City Council and City Planner. I have a property encroaching the back lane near rezoning of church property on India Avenue in Prince Rupert. My concern is the volume of the parking for 18 apartments. There could be 36 people living in a building with each having a car. There could be 36 cars parked at the same time. I would like no parking sign posted in a lane adjacent to my property at 1123 Frederick Street. If you have any questions, please contact me. Yours truly, Antonio Ferreira. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Now we're going to move into public comments. Now before that, I'm just going to read a statement of the chair. So a public hearing is organized according to Section 890 of the Local Government Act. Tonight's public hearing involves the zoning amendment bylaw number 3362, 2015. The intent of the bylaw is to rezone the property located at 1433 India Avenue to accommodate a multi-family project. Every person present who believes that their interest is affected by the proposed bylaw should be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. None of you will be discouraged or prevented from making your views known. However, it is important to restrict your remarks to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. A person may make their statement in writing, as outlined in the public notice, and if received by the deadline, their presentation will be read by staff at the public hearing. If a person wishes to make a presentation at the public hearing, they are welcome to do so, provided that the following criteria are followed. This is necessary in order to allow for the recording of the public hearing process. The chairperson will recognize only those individuals who present themselves at the table and speak into the microphone. Prior to speaking, please provide your full name and be prepared to spell your surname for the corporate administrator. Please also provide your residential or business address. Should you wish to read from a prepared statement, the city would appreciate receiving a copy for reference purposes by the corporate administrator. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation. Please note that this is not a question period at which a debate takes place. City Council will not provide any comments on issues raised, but will be in attendance to listen to your comments presented. Should no additional speakers present themselves, the chair will call 3 times for anyone else to speak to the matter, and if no one else comes forward to the public hearing, it will be adjourned. After the public hearing is adjourned, the council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representations made at this hearing. So that being said, I'll call for anybody who would like to make a statement to the microphone regarding this proposed development. Come on up here, sir. And the little green button there turns on your microphone.
What I have to do is
Oh, this right here in front of you there, this mic here. There you go. And then just press the green button right on that black box right in front of you there. Thanks for you.
Oh, this one.
There you go.
Well, thank you for letting me say something about that proposal that the number 2 group wants to build over there. I live in the area for about 40 years.
Can you state your name and your address
Oh,
for the record?
I'm sorry.
please? Thank you.
My name is Tony Ferreira. Ferreira. Antonio. And I live in a neighborhood for 40 years. When I built the house, that the church was in the place. And so far, up to the church built or I built my house, we have no problem at all with the neighborhood. But right now, what I see in here is that they call them group, number 2 group. He wants to build 17 apartments. Now before was 18, now it's 17. And that property is not that big. How can you going to put 17? You'll be about 24 people plus 24 cars, okay? Each apartment is going to have 2 people. Nobody lives in one bed by himself. Once, that's what I figured. Now, I'm against the rezoning for the R3. I like the council consider and keep the zone R2 like used to be. If he wants to do it, he can build 6 apartments or 6 houses, six singles houses in a place, or 6 apartments, and keep the zone R2 zoning. I appreciate if you're thinking about it, but and the main thing, my back lane is right there. I don't want to, when you get lots of population like that in the same place, it's going to be people drinking like everybody drink, I drink. There'll be people going down in the back lane there to the liquor store. It's only about under meters away. The liquor store is right there. I don't want my grandchildren, see somebody coming with the wheel with the cases beer on each side, going to the back lane to the place. That means I appreciate if you thinking about it and respect, the zoning bylaw like used to be for 40 years. Nobody complained up to now. And now, of course, I figure they're obligated to complain because 18 apartments is too much, and we don't need that in Rupert. That group number 3 said is going to spend $1.5 million. But that people want to build a place for the rich people, not for the poor people who are in Prince Rupert. We need the people, somebody to build buildings for the low-income people in Rupert, not that ones who come in here just make a few dollars in a couple of years and then they move away from Prince Rupert. That's all my concerns, and I hope you. My English is not too good. I hope you appreciate because I don't speak that good, but I try my best. Huh? And you, Mr. Mayor, you the captain of the boat, this boat, and here, when you start, when it's the time to vote, I ask you please vote for R2, not for R3. Keep the R2 the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other people who would like to come speak about rezoning? Okay, I'll call a second time if there's anybody else out there that would like to come speak to the mic regarding this particular rezoning. And I'll call a third and final time for anyone here would like to speak to it? Excuse me for just one moment here. Just a process question, Mr. Mandrick. Is the proponent allowed to speak at a public hearing regarding this?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, just checking. Okay, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff Greenwell, 1128 7th Avenue East, Prince Rupert is my home in this town. I just wanted to answer Mr. Ferrer's concerns. I understand his concerns, but he has a few misconceptions. This is not 17 apartments. This is 17 suites. There are single occupancy suites, not double occupancy suites. So there would only be for one person per suite. So the maximum vehicles we would expect would be 17. The comment the rezoning does not bring the city any more money. Well, currently as a church, it paid $13 a year in property tax for the last X number of years. If we are appraised around the 1.5 million to 2 million mark, and the city's financial officer would be able to tell you what the mill rate is, etc. But I predict our property tax will be between $25,000 and $40,000 on the property. The only other comment Mr. Ferrer made, as a private sector company, it's not our responsibility to build social housing. It's a government responsibility. So really it's, this property is not necessarily for the rich. We've met with seniors. We have more meetings going on with seniors. We've also met with corporations. As you know, we've expanded to potential uses for this place. These suites, if they were used for executive rental, they would not be rented by the night. The minimum rental period would be 1 month, or annually, ideally. So since our last meeting and since my last comments on our end, nothing has really changed. We've worked with the planner and the engineering staff to address any concerns they had. And we had a meeting this morning, which is very positive, and we're committed to the items they raised, and there's no issue for us with those. So, as far as we're concerned, we feel we've met all of the necessary criteria that the city has put forward. So, unless the council has any questions for me, I would step down.
Any questions from council? Okay, thank you very much. You may come. Yep.
Thank you. I guess the way I see the proposal, he said he's going to spend $1.5 million, and the rent has got to be $2,500 a month. Huh? You tell me what kind of seniors and Prince Rupert collect that kind of money. The Canada pensions, the most of them is $950. The old pension is 500 something. It's going to, how that people going to live if you got to pay $2,500 for that room? That's one thing I'd like you to consider too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there other people that'd like to speak? Welcome.
Hello, Mr. Breen. Push this?
Oh, you're on already, actually.
Okay. I just wanted to let the council know that great consideration was taken into by 2G Group.
Can you just quickly state your name and your address for the corporate administrator? My apologies.
Okay. Emily Kawaguchi, Kawaguchi, of 120 Dib Place.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that great consideration was taken by the applicant for the use for this property, which is currently a vacant church and will never be a church again. And the Baptist church has put the building up for sale. And given the layout of the building, the parking that is available, it really is the highest and best use that it could be for that property. And with the plans that the applicant has, it will actually increase value. From my professional opinion as a real estate agent, it will increase value because it will be a very high-end, well-maintained structure in the neighborhood. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Other people that like to comment? Okay, I'll call a second time. Anyone who wishes to speak regarding this rezoning? Okay, and I'll call a third and final time. Okay, seeing no other people, I'd like to adjourn tonight's public hearing. Oh, so, excuse me. I'd like to get a motion to adjourn tonight's public hearing. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Rahal. All those in favor? Motion carried. I'd like to call tonight's regular meeting of council to order. Recommendation that the regular meeting be suspended and the committee of whole meeting be convened. Moved by Councillor Kinney, second by Councillor Morrow. All those in favor? Motion carried. Now I'd like to call tonight's committee of the whole meeting to order. Recommendation that the agenda for the committee of the whole meeting of April 27th, 2015 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Kinney, second by Councillor Grahal. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, first we have a presentation from Kathleen Palm regarding CBC goals and objectives. Welcome.
Don't make her nervous, Your Worship. Your Worship and members of council, I'm really glad to be here. And for your viewing pleasure, I've got some pictures of my presentation. Okay, I'll try it again. Oh, look, it worked. Okay. Try again. Is it warming up? Okay. This is a picture that goes back in time to a long time ago. Anyway, I'll try to be brief. My goal is to be finished my presentation in 8 minutes. 7:31. Okay. All right. Let's talk about the CBC down the street. My name is Kathleen Palm, and I am a longtime resident of our city and an even longtime listener and supporter of CBC Radio. Now is the time again to speak up for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. This city has done so over and over again. We're probably one of the major city correspondents that CBC nationally has had over the years since 1988. And if you could go back, our radio started in 1935 here by some fellows that decided we should have radio, and then subsequently it was taken over by CBC, and we've had CBC radio ever since. And restaurant at 346 Styles Place, for anyone who wasn't around, was actually built for the CBC, and I believe it was finished in 1967. So from what I've heard, that was built like a fortress to keep our broadcasting safe and sound down there. And when the CBC changed the configuration, there were at that time 14 people there, and the people like Mark Forsyth and Gloria Makarenko have all worked there. So has Bill Good and all kinds of people. It's been a training station for the CBC nationally, and actually there's other people that have gone elsewhere with the CBC. So what we're concerned about is when you listen to the CBC program, you'll hear things like, you are listening on such and such a frequency to Kispiox or Ocean Falls. And that's all you'll hear about Kispiox or Ocean Falls until something bad happens, and then you'll hear about that, and then maybe the story isn't finished. Like, for example, Ocean Falls, apparently I hadn't heard about it for years, and then they had a landslide that divided their community, and I haven't heard the ending of that. Did the slide get cleared so that people could communicate and go back and forth between their homes? Okay, so we in Prince Rupert have held 2 meetings. Last year, I guess I was tipped over the edge when they gave the wrong weather. I was looking out, it was a really fine day, and at 9 o'clock they said it's going to blow 90 today. So I phoned CBC, and they said, oops, that was the wrong weather. And I said, well, you know, there's a really big difference between taking a skiff out in the harbor when it's going to blow 90 or putting your clothes on the line. So I was told that was the wrong weather. Well, we've had enough of the wrong weather. It's time, once again, for us all to make our voices heard, that we want the standards that CBC has for itself, we want those standards enforced. So, now further, there's not much programming from up here. But the CRTC said back in '88, you think you can change the station down to 2 people? No, you're denied. They were expected, the mandate was to have 4 people, just like it turned out Prince George and Kelowna have. So instead of 2 people, and last year it was down to 1 person, we really got to have 4. And with 4 people, we would get discussion of emergency broadcasting systems, or all kinds of news and programming that links our communities together. Okay, let's see. So here is a list that communities are served by CFPR back in 1988, and some of those communities, maybe you haven't heard anything of them, but if they had 4 people, they could go around these communities and find out what's important to them. Prince Rupert is a center where people live from all over these communities, so we are expecting the CBC, our national broadcaster, to bring people together. So we say that Daybreak North is not enough. 2 people in Prince Rupert are not enough to provide adequate news and programming. It is time to ask the CBC to do the right thing by following the Broadcasting Act of Canada, the current strategic plan, and the CBC journalistic standards and practices. And it must be said that when you look at this chart of all these communities, settlements here and there, that the land that this represented is 17.7% of the province. So with that, we need reporting. It doesn't do us enough to include us with Northern BC. So tonight I come before you, the leaders of our city, to ask you to join with the mayors of Calgary, Hazelton, Thunder Bay, and elsewhere, and write the CBC. Tell them that Northwest BC needs CBC radio coverage, that we need 4 employees at our Prince Rupert Bureau. To share these concerns with the CRTC, with the Honourable Shelley Glover, Minister of Canadian Heritage, and with the shadow NDP and Liberal Party critics. To ask the BC representative on the BC Board of Directors to come to Prince Rupert. Her name is Marley Odin, and we've written a letter to her to ask her to join us here, but they haven't replied, the corporate office in Ottawa, or Toronto, I forget which. Anyway, we need to have someone come here, and then they can explain what they're doing on the Board of Directors. And so we would also like to say that CBC is often, because of their limited staff, and they're looking for news and programming. So what would you like to talk about? Well, we'd like to remind everyone that the issue of CBC is in fact a municipal issue. CBC is one of our most valuable promoters. By telling stories about our local politics, our issues, our recreations, our regions, CBC helps promote local communities to other communities within the same province, to other provinces, and to other countries. It is the cheapest form of advertising many of us have, and it pays by attracting tourist dollars and raising awareness of the investment potential of our many regions. Okay, CBC helps promote our regional cultural talent. We are here to raise the expectations of CBC and not reduce them, not give up. This is about our social fabric of our region and our cultural narrative. And some people might say, what are you talking about? I never even listened to the CBC. Well, you will when the night the power goes off, or you will the time the earthquake happens. There are times when it is useful to everyone, and you won't see the material on Facebook if there's nobody down the street putting that online. So, and I would just like to make the point about Nepal. So, let's see. For anyone who is thinking about Nepal, I'd say go home tonight and take your radio, battery operated hopefully, and tune in about from 10 till 10 in the morning and about till 7 in the morning, from 10 at night till 7 in the morning, and see what stations you can get, because CBC people have told me that, say if that big Cascadia earthquake happens, what they'll do is the reporters from all across BC would feed into Vancouver. But if CBC Vancouver cannot broadcast, then it'll come out of Toronto. But nevertheless, what you can do, they'll broadcast. And on my radio at home, I can get 1010 CBC Calgary, and on a good night I can get 740 Edmonton CBC, and on a good night I can get 690, which is AM CBC in Vancouver. So it's emergency times when the CBC matters. So we would like the City of Prince Rupert to continue advocating for the CBC by passing a resolution that says we want CBC Radio to follow the CRTC decision, which mandates 4 people working here. CBC matters to many organizations for passing on news and health information. Back in 1980, even the province weighed in and said, we're going to watch how this goes. Tim McDonald, now back to the comment about not everyone is on the internet. For example, I'll say Tim McDonald of the Library Board Chair said that in 2014 the computer stations were used nearly 11,000 times. Other Northwest communities may have similar stats. Now, this is about the cultural narrative of our part of Canada. It's about our communities, our settlements, and our part in Canada. This has become urgent because CBC is purporting to give us more regional news. If you read their strategic plan, it's all about, we're going to give you more news about your region, but it's not happening. They seem to think that running Daybreak North and American Public Radio, playing segments of national shows 6 to 9 times is how to do it. What they're talking about and what they do, there's a big difference. So we hope that the communities that you represent will go back and help the CBC by communicating to them. If you have news in your area of expertise, we hope that you encourage them and let them know about what is going on, and that we expect them to fulfill their mandate of being the voice of Canada for Canadians. This is a cultural, regional, economic, geographic part of Canada, and we deserve to have excellent radio service. We just want more of the CBC. So thank you very much. There you are. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I don't know if they're here for a reason, but I remember that Councillor Basso and I used to be many times on the opposite sides of of the political fence, except for when I do remember she headed up the campaign for CBC in Prince Rupert, and that was probably the 1987-88 campaign, and with the help of a number of other people. But I just remember that ex-councillor Basso led the fight at the time, and I would like to tell her how much I appreciated her efforts at that time, and hopefully this council will do the same thing.
Thank you. Okay, next we have a presentation from Antonio Vera, volunteer organizer at BYU Living Legends Dance Company. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and esteemed council members. We're grateful for the opportunity to be here to present to you a little bit about BYU Living Legends. Now, Andrew Darby and myself, Antonio Vera, we are competitors in the business field, adversaries, if you will. But we have come together in order to promote the Living Legends, and in that same spirit of bringing the people together, that is the message in which the Living Legends tour group, when they come through to perform, it is that message of bringing cultures together. The BYU Living Legends have performed all over the world, have performed in front of royalty, and here in North America, if you've seen the 2002 Winter Olympics out of Salt Lake City, they also performed there in the opening ceremonies. Now, in Prince Rupert, it's going to be the last stop of the Canadian tour before they head off to Alaska. And we're here just to promote, just to make sure and ensure that this truly a cultural event is not missed or not kind of put to the wayside, ensure that it is heard of as opposed to just kind of passing through. And that is why we're here. I believe we had a promo video set up to show. It really is the best way to kind of give you a taste of what the Living Legends is. Oh, I see it right there. That's fantastic.
Just one moment.
Turn on that and put it by
Oh, okay.
Is that how I do it? Is there sound for this? No sound? Just one moment here. Hold on. Oh, the computer hasn't been?
Okay. We can watch it.
Sure. We'll just watch it.
There you go.
Apology about no sound. We'll make sure we have sound next time.
Next time. Yeah, so as you can see, they do specialize in Polynesian, Native American, and Spanish dance from all the different parts of those regions. And it really will be a wonderful cultural event. And we'd like to invite you all. We've provided some promotional tickets for you guys to be able to come and enjoy. You guys are absolutely invited to attend, and we hope that you'll be able to kind of spread the word via word of mouth and with your family and friends and within your networks of this wonderful event that's coming through Prince Rupert on May 8th, starting at 7:30. They're also going to be playing the show for the students of Charles Hayes, and that's a free admission for those students. So they'll be attending in the afternoon to see this show, and then the show for the public starts at 7:30 on May 8th. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. We'll absolutely promote that for sure. Thank you. Okay, next presentation from Michelle Mintenko, Chair of the 2015 Grad Parents Executive.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm one of the grad parent too.
Also,
So I'm not sure if I'm in conflict or...
I'm not sure. I think you're okay. Yeah. Thank you for that, though. That's great.
Hi, I'm Michelle Montemuro, 140 Crestview Drive, and I'm also a city employee. However, tonight I'm actually acting on behalf of the Grad Parents Committee, and unfortunately Michelle Montenko gives her regrets. She was not feeling well to attend tonight. So in addition, the letter that was written from our committee directed at Mayor and Council did have some information, and I also have some additional information that I would like for Council and for Mayor and staff to consider. So I thank you both, all of you, Mayor Brain and members of Council and staff, for taking tonight to consider our request. Many municipalities throughout the province have a user fee-based recreation complex, and ours is no different. Many community organizations rely upon these facilities when hosting sporting events, weddings, graduations, and proms. Most times when facilities are rented, they are to groups and organizations that are charging a fee to attend or participate in an event. The fees are collected are used to offset the cost of the rental, staff, and equipment fees for the facility. The 2015 and prior grad parents committees have provided a no alcohol, no drug prom celebration for the graduates of Charles Hayes Secondary School for many years. There's never been a ticket price for students to attend, and the cost for this year's prom is approximately $30,000 based on 150 grads attending. Our committee is a not-for-profit, and the funds are raised through fundraising done by the students themselves, which is added to donations received from local businesses. Without the generosity of the community, this prom would not happen. However, this year, with the cost increase of renting the arena, it has seriously increased the need for more funding in order to cover these costs. The new City of Prince Rupert Fees and Charges bylaw does not provide for not-for-profit organizations such as ours. There seems to be little negotiating room for a lower rate to accommodate our budgetary needs. The rate that was contracted for the prom in 2014 was doubled this year with the new bylaw. In researching other municipalities around the province, such as Burnaby, Surrey, Pitt Meadows, and Maple Ridge, fees for facility rentals were structured around not-for-profit, going towards youth, senior, adult non-for-profit rates, private, and commercial. The rates were heavily discounted at 60 to 70% for the not-for-profit versus private rental fees. Another municipality has graduations and proms held in recreation facilities similar to ours, with no other choices to accommodate the graduating class. They have recognized the events are not for profit and are simply a celebration of youth in the community. In reviewing each municipality's fees for facility rental and our current fees at the Recreation Center being charged, we have a simple request of Council. This request is not only for the 2015 graduating class, but it is meant to be a legacy for future graduation classes in Prince Rupert. Our request is this.
We ask that you make a resolution or bylaw of council to waive all rental costs of the Jim Saccone Civic Center for the 2015 graduating class prom and all future graduation class proms. The resolution or bylaw would also note that the only charges they would charge would be the current fees per hour for the use of staff and for the equipment necessary for setup and takedown, as an example, the high lift. I thank you for considering our request tonight. Our committee is glad that you made the time to listen to our request for tonight's meeting and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilor Ferguson.
I know in the past, proms, the proms have been held at the Highliner and in the school gym, at the curling rink. Why did you choose to use the high school this year? I mean, choose to use the Civic Center this year?
One of the primary uses for the Civic Center arena in particular is that the prom is always theme-based. And because there's a large graduating class, and usually each one of those participants of the grad class generally bring a guest, all the parents are volunteers, so there could be upwards in 300 people in the facility. The curling rink may satisfy that amount. The Highliner, I think, would be very tight because it's not only just a dance, there's also gaming tables, there are also mocktails, there's food being brought in, and this is all done basically, this is what the fundraising is for. So in this particular case, the theme for this year's prom is Alice in Wonderland. And what we have is a number of parents going around and providing decorating and items. And one of the primary costs of the arena is the draping that's required in order to make it not look like an arena. And it's all done with the man lift. There's couple of staff down at the recreation in particular that are familiar with the man lift and can get the job done, but it does take several hours to do it. And I think it's just the size of the facility and the way that it can be set up, and also the fact that we can bring in what we do need to bring in, whereas other facilities that we may use either charge a larger cost, or maybe they restrict our bringing in of food or beverages, and they want us to use their services, which is they're a private function, and they're looking for money as well. And granted, by no means are a committee looking for, to have everything for nothing and to be given something handed on a silver platter. But I think that the idea would be is other municipalities face the same issue where it's a user fee-based system, and I know just by being a city employee that our facility that we have here, although it's wonderful, it's not self-sustaining, and I understand that. However, this is the youth in our community. It's the only graduating class that we have because we used to have the two high schools for a short period of time. I'd like to keep it within the city, in the city facilities, rather than going outside to a private use. And our whole committee feels the same way, that we would like to continue using the recreation center. But when we're considering a bill of potentially $5,000 or $6,000 just to rent that facility for decorating, for holding the event and takedown, and the number of parents and volunteers that it's required, at least asking for something as much as waiving the rental fees and just charging the committee the cost of just the staff and for the takedown and setup and everything. I think if that was set up for a long period of time, which I understand communities like Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge have gone into with the grad committees, it actually works twofold, where you get to keep the youth in the community in a facility that maybe some of them have never even gone into before, and they can see what's there and what's available. So it's kind of twofold in a way, that you can encourage more use of the facility. But I leave that in the hands of all of you, and we look forward to a response.
Thank you very much. Councilor Kinnan?
What I see you're proposing is almost cost neutral. You're just covering the wages and the equipment rental, and that's it. So it's not going to cost the city one penny. Correct. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we'll move into the question period from the public, and before I do that, I'm just going to read a statement of the chair for the procedures of the committee of the whole. For those of you present this evening and for those watching via television, let me please explain that a committee of the whole meeting is a committee that consists of all members of council. This meeting allows council members to deal with issues in greater detail, but is less formal than a regular council meeting. During this meeting, issues are not formally adopted, but recommendations may be made at the next regular council meeting. At that time, the recommendations of the previous committee of the whole meeting will be adopted and acted upon. Some key points to remember when making your presentations are: remember, council meetings are televised, and it is very important to introduce yourself and, if applicable, name of the organization that you're representing and speak directly into the microphone in a clear voice. When presenting, please address any comments or questions to the chair of the meeting. Keep your presentations brief. 5 minutes would be ideal, as council has several presentations on the agenda. Once you have completed your presentation, please ensure you summarize any requests or concerns. The chair will then ask council members if they have any questions. Remember, there will be no decisions made at this meeting on any requests or concerns you have made. Lastly, requests will be referred to staff for review, report, and recommendation to council. Council meetings are very full. We would appreciate your consideration of your time allotment. So that being said, I'll call for anybody who'd like to just generally speak to council about any issue in particular. Anybody else out there would like to speak to council? And I'll call one last time. Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to reconvene the regular, or to adjourn this meeting and reconvene the regular meeting of council. Moved by Councillor Kinney. Second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, item 2, recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting of April 27th, 2015 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Motion carried. Item 3A, recommendation that the minutes of the special council meeting of December 3rd, 2014 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Mihara, second by Councillor Kinney. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 3B, recommendation that the minutes of the special regular council meeting of April 7th, 2015 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 3C, recommendation that the minutes of the special council meeting of April 13th, 2015 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Kinney, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 3D, recommendation of the minutes of the public hearing meeting of April 13th, 2015 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Reinhala, seconded by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 3E, recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 13th, 2015 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And item 3F, recommendation that the minutes of the special regular council meeting of April 16th, 2015 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Kinney, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, moving on to item 10A under bylaws. Report from the city planner regarding application for zoning amendment bylaw number 3362, 2015. Mr. Cricket.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report that I presented at the public hearing is actually the same report that is for the bylaw itself. So at this point in time, I can answer any questions you may have.
Okay, Councillor Thorkelson.
I just have, it's probably a technical question. When we say this is going to be a boarding house and then it's going to be a senior center, as written in your report, if the proponent decided to turn it into, after we pass the zoning, to turn it into a 5-bedroom apartment, would that, or a 10-bedroom apartment, what would we do then?
So we started to discuss this project based on a business case, which was boarding house versus senior citizens home or senior citizen accommodation. The matter of fact is that we are actually dealing with zoning, which is RM3 at the density 1.25. So he's well below the density, and he selected that specific zone because it permits boarding houses. It's not that he is so he is not by the fact that he's applying for rezoning, he is not committing to any one of those uses. He's essentially promising to the council that he's going to build a project by the fact that he has presented a certain plan. If he decides to, say, eliminate 2 units, it really doesn't change very much because he has an upper limit that he will never really reach in that location. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just trying to understand the difference actually between the changes to the zoning, okay, and then the changes, because we normally have quality of life changes, quality of life community plan changes, but we didn't have to do that for this. So then we had to change the zoning, and then we also have to do a development variance permit, which I understand we do lots of those, right? That's because it's going to have a bit of an encroachment. And then we have a development permit. So is it the development permit that controls what? And because we spent a long time, and I'm asking these questions not particularly about this. If we hopefully we'll have lots of development. So if we're just rezoning something for multifamily, and that means that any kind of multifamily could be built there as long as it's within the M3 zoning, RM3 zoning, yeah. Then we shouldn't be relying on somebody's decision or to make it a boarding home or a senior's home or whatever. We should be understanding that we're zoning it for that particular use, so that any kind of use for that particular use. So if he decided to flip the property to somebody else who wanted to build a 3-story apartment block, that I'm not suggesting that's what would happen, but that's in another case somebody may decide to do that. So we were really just voting on the zoning. And then when we get to the development permit, then that's when we are actually having control over the type of facility. Is that correct?
At the development permit, all we're considering is a form and shape. We're not restricting use. We talked about specific uses along the way of our continuum of presentations. There are instruments that can vary the use, such as covenants. There are housing agreements that can specify it's only for a certain use. But what we are doing today is simply rezoning it to RM3, which has a density of 1.25 density ratio. And yes, at this point in time, we are relying on sincerity of the developer. We are relying on the sincerity of his plans that they are going to accordingly to what he has suggested. But in the very end, we only have the authority over permitted uses. We don't have the authority over what exactly will go there. Yeah.
Other questions? Councilor Niche? Okay. Other questions for Mr. Cricket? Councilman Thorfinn?
I just want to know, are we just going to be asking just on this one, because we're also having to do the application for the variance and also for the development permit? And I was wondering if you're asking for all 3 at the same time, or if you want to do each one individually.
They all have to be done individually. The first one is, of course, zoning. If zoning doesn't pass, then the other two are moot. If the development variance permit doesn't pass, then the development permit is moot.
Right. Okay. Councilor Killian?
Okay, now, if we rezone this, we give him the variance, then he also wants a development permit tonight. And it's very difficult for us to put any covenants on a development permit at this stage.
You basically we had that conversation at the last meeting when the question was, can we put on a covenant? That covenant has to go prior to zoning being completed. There was an option for housing agreement. At this point in time, you are deciding on a land use, and I would suggest that in order to go back to the covenant or to the housing agreement, I would suggest that we would have to redo the whole process.
Other questions? Okay, so the recommendation is that council give third reading and adopt the zoning amendment bylaw number 3362, 2015. No, I'm just looking for a move. Okay, moved by Councilor Thorkelson, second by Councilor Morale. Okay, so discussion. Councilor Niche.
I've thought long and hard about this one. One problem that really I'd like people to take a perspective of looking at it from, if you were looking at your front window and you took the three houses across the street and you combined them into one building and you had 18 people living in them. To me, that's too much people. If you look at the current bylaws for residential areas, you're allowed to have two units on one piece of property. So you can have a house with a suite, a duplex. So essentially, right now, if you took the amount of square footage there, 3 average size lots, and that's 6 units, and he's proposing 17 or 18, whatever, at this time. Now, even if, for an example, you have Mr. Palmer, who really, he asked for a third unit on the top of 6th Avenue, and he got approval for that. So even in that, there's a house where he now has 3 units. Even if we took an extra unit and gave that right to this developer, you would still only be allowed 9 units in that amount of space for an average residential area. So he's essentially asking for twice as much. He's basically, look across the street from your house, and would you think it's acceptable to have 6 units in the one house across the street, and 6 units to the next house of that, and 6 units to the next house of that? To me, it's too much for a residential area. It's too small of a property for that. I don't think that 6 units in that area is right. Per lot. Actually, he's got 6 lots there, 25-foot lots. Another problem I have with this is the city has really taken a stand in years while they've been broke, of not maintaining or using laneways. And in this particular application, the person wants to use the lane for parking. This is a gravel lane that's not maintained, and in the wintertime is not plowed. So basically the way I look at it is there's going to put a lot of parking strains on the street. I don't think that that's right. I don't think that the neighbors in the houses across the street or beside should have to deal with whether it be 4 or 5 or 6 cars parked in front of their house all the time. So that's another issue I have, is putting a lot of pressure on the laneway, which we do not want to put money into. We do not want to pay for it. We want to put as little money as possible into these things. And if they cannot provide the parking in their own parking lot and they're expecting to use the lane, then to me that's just not right. Basically what I have to say.
Councilor Cunningham?
Other than Mr. Pereira, were there any other neighbors that came forth from across the street or down the road or in the immediate area complaining about this?
Mr. Crockett?
That was the only response to the public notification.
Other comments? Councilor Rehara?
Yeah, my question is from Corinne. If we have 17 suites or 8 or 9 two-bedrooms apartments, so for property tax that may make any difference for 17 suites or 8 or 9 apartments?
Okay, so basically, whatever the property would be valued at based on assessment, whatever the rate is, it's a residential, that's what the taxes would be collected by the city. And then however the landlord actually allocates that is, I guess, part of the rental agreement.
Councilor Cunningham?
The proponent there gave out a figure of $25,000 to $30,000 a year in taxes if this is rezoned and built. Are those figures fairly accurate?
Again, it depends on whatever the assessed value would actually come in at.
Other comments? Councilor Moore? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand your concerns, Councilor Nish. I just want to make clear this particular motion just for the zoning amendment, not the permit. I think we could achieve two objectives by granting item 3. The first is increased density, and I understand that that's a concern. But based on our official community plan, we've got a stated objective to try to build within our urban footprint. To not have to overbuild our infrastructure, which has caused some of the issues we're experiencing today. So, in my opinion, we're taking an underutilized property generating virtually no revenue for us, and it can really become higher density use that can generate more tax revenue for us. So. Again, I understand the concern with density in this particular case, but what I think it achieves is also goes back to our revenue growth strategy, but also the consistency with the current iteration of the official community plan, which is to build within our existing urban footprint. So that's really what I have to say on the particular zoning amendment. Other comments, Councilor Nish?
Once again, I'm not against densification. I have no problem with densification, but in this situation, you're looking at 3 times of what is allowed for it. So like if you broke it up into individual, it's actually individual properties that's not legally combined yet. So if you took the average home and put it, this is in a residential neighborhood, you got to remember, a residential neighborhood where there's people living across the street in houses that have lived across the street from a church for 40 years. It's been busy 1 day a week and really not that busy, and that's probably the reason why this church sold. You have to realize that you just take 3 houses across the street from you and add 18 people to them. To me, that is just too much for a residential neighborhood. If this was a project downtown, a building lot downtown, and the other thing is we're relying on what this person has to say. We've relied too much in this community over the years on what people have to say. Oh, we're going to buy your apartment and we're going to fix it up. We're going to get it running again. And where has that got us? We cannot always accept everything that someone's going to say. We have to take judgment. And to me, the judgment in this situation is you're putting 18 people. Oh, here's a good one. My house is 2/3 of the size of this property. If I all of a sudden put 12 people in my house and rented out 12 rooms and parked 12 cars in my driveway, do you think my neighbors would be happy?
Could I interject for a moment? Question, thank you for that, for Mr. Krekic, then technical question. Let's just imagine a scenario where this property is purchased, it's flipped, sold to someone else, now they decide to build an apartment or something different that they've been told. Does that new purchaser have to adhere to some sort of parking regulations that's going to have to require them to, because we're rezoning this and these permits based on the fact that we're assuming that 18 executives will most likely be living in these buildings for 4 to 6 years during the development period, in which case at some other time potentially it could be a seniors housing place because it's meant for one individual. Would that flipped person, whoever purchased it, would have to do something else to acquire to a parking bylaw or things like that? I'm not sure how that would look.
So any new use requires to satisfy the parking requirements, an increase in number of units, and so our zoning bylaw requires one parking place per each unit. If somebody comes back with a plan for say 40 units, let's be ridiculous, 400 units, they would have to require 40 parking places or 400 parking places off-site. Same as this proposal. This proposal is providing, he has reduced the number of units to 17. 17 parking places for 17 units. Shall he come back in a year and say, I'd like to put in 2 more units, he will have to he will be required to provide 2 parking places off-site. Where he would do that, when you look at this plan, you'll find out that will be very difficult. The other part is, say, a new project. That's the second part of your question. If somebody were to build, the property is flipped, 2 years from now, somebody's building a multi-story apartment, it would have to go through a development permit.
Any other comments from council? Councilor Nish? Oh, sorry, Councilor Thickerson.
Well, I just want to say the reasons that I am supportive of this what I look as an apartment building. First of all, I was thinking about that density. There are 6 lots there, and we've been talking at this council about what would it look like to try to have a development on 25-foot lots if we want to densify. So if you put 6 houses on 6 lots, because there's 6 lots there, you could have easily 18 people living, a mom, a dad, and a most of us can't get rid of our kids when they're 24 or 25 years old, but I mean, you could easily have 3 people in a house. And so you could have 3 25-foot, you could have 18 people in there by having 6 lots and building. You could have 4 people in each one of those houses. If they're young families, they'll probably have 4 people in each one of those houses. And we've been talking about trying to design houses for 25-foot lots so that we can start selling 25-foot lots as starter homes to young families. And if you had a starter home on a 25-foot lot with a young family, you probably have 4, and 4 times 6 is more than 17 people. So that's what I was thinking when I was consulting that, when I was thinking about the density, because I was thinking, yeah, is it too dense for a neighborhood where everybody else has bigger lots and one family in each one of those homes, or 2 families in each one of those homes. But so I looked at having 2 families on a 50-foot lot. You know, going to duplexes on a 50-foot lot, because lots of those buildings around there, homes around there, are duplexes. So if you put a duplex on a 50-foot lot, that's 2 homes on 50 feet. And so if you have 2 families, there's 6 lots. So if you had a duplex on a 50-foot lot, you'd have 3 duplexes, and 3 duplexes. If you had 3 people living in each one of those duplexes, you're still coming up with more than what this place is. And it's not unreasonable to have 3 people living in a duplex, each duplex singly. So I looked at it and I thought, well, that's not an unreasonable specification, but I was trying to think of that as a problem. So the other thing is that church is an empty church, and sooner or later, somebody's going to complain that people are hanging out there, and it needs to be torn down because it will be considered to be a derelict building. And we really need to, when we have somebody who wants to do something with a building that has been abandoned for quite a few years now, that we should jump at that chance. I also agree with Councillor Moreau in that the city's plan is to densify so that we can stay within our own footprint. And I realize that lots of people, that some people in our house, one of the people in the public wrote to us and said that we don't need to densify because there's lots of places. Well, there's lots of places that people don't live in anymore, and we do have places that both the city has and private individuals have empty lots where there could be building, but people haven't asked to do that. This developer wants to develop this already, this building. So I looked at that, and that's why I looked at the pros and cons. It puts money into, again, what Councillor Cunningham said, puts money into the city's pockets where there is no money coming in now, and that's $30,000. If that were the case, if it were $30,000, that's a big chunk of money compared to some of the other things that we're talking about doing to save money. So then I just had a couple of questions just on this zoning. If we look at page 41, it was also to address what Councillor Nisha is also concerned about parking, because so many people have been concerned about parking. And on page 41 of the package, it says the lane will require grading upgrades to facilitate the increased and ongoing traffic. I was wondering if that's going to be the city's responsibility or if that would be the people on the lane's responsibility. So would it be shared between people who already live there and new people going in? Or and what about the maintenance of the lane? Because I think that, to me, were some legitimate concerns.
We did not discuss maintenance of the lane. Typically, we don't do that at this stage of the application. But we did discuss the improvements to the lane, and the applicant considered all of these points that were raised in engineering referral as reasonable and accepted it.
And then I just have two other questions. They're not really concerns, but I was wondering about the proposed retaining wall must be engineered. Where was that retaining wall?
So that retaining wall is just give me a second here. That retaining wall is here and here. So there's a drop off here to the property. Below, these people were concerned about their drainage and about parking shining. When people park, it shining onto their property. So he rearranged, the applicant rearranged his parking requirements or parking design, and this area here is also a steep drop off that requires an engineered wall. Typically, walls that are over 1.2 meters require structural engineer to design it.
And I have one last question that I tagged, and that's it says upper and lower parking areas to be paved with parking delineation and an oil water separator may be required. And I wanted to voice if this my opinion that if this project goes ahead, that we should be trying to do a number of things on new property, and with things that we discussed with the green team 10 years ago, and that was one, having oil water separators, and two, having kind of permeable material that you can build parking lots of, so that the water just doesn't pool and then it actually goes into the, now if it's just running onto a rock and not sinking anywhere, that's another thing. Or maybe in Rupert it's a good thing to have your water to go into your storm sewers, I'm not sure. But we were looking at all of those kind of different green building things. And I think that we should start, my opinion is that we should start looking at putting those into some of those green ideas. We should start looking at putting them into these new developments as they go on, because there's no use repeating and the things that when we could do them differently. That's all.
Maybe I should respond to this question. We actually discussed this point this morning when engineering coordinator prepared this referral. He wasn't sure if the oil and water separator is required, so he placed that may be required, that he communicated with the building inspector at this size of the property, oil and water separator are not the requirement. With respect to the paving, the conversation about permeable versus non-permeable parking, it's something that we have talked about in the past. In this specific situation, because of the conversation around parking, we wanted to make sure that the developer delineates the parking to our current zoning requirements, which means that each parking will have the required size as we have it in our regulations, both engineering and zoning. So we are at this point, and this is something that is not necessarily part of zoning. This is something that we can probably extend into the next round, and I will communicate with both engineering department and developer about options that would still give us the satisfaction that the parking stalls are of the size as required.
Councilor Killian?
I see he still has one parking stall on the lane.
That's not in a lane. That's not in a lane. That's on his property. So this is the edge of the property. This is the lane, and these are the parking places that are on his. So this will be perpendicular parking areas, and this will be parallel parking.
At the top of that lane right now is a duplex. It's actually being turned into a fourplex. So you're going to have, it's going to be interesting, that back lane.
Other comments? Councilor Niche?
This is where I was talking about. There's 5 parking spots in the back of that spot there, and that's all serviced by a very poor gravel driveway, basically. If you go down on any rainy day, you will see basically a track of water that flows across the gravel, washes the gravel out onto Frederick Street, down Frederick Street, and across the road across Frederick, and down as far as 11th Avenue. And that is a big concern when there's 5 vehicles that are supposedly going to use this lane. What I see realistically is those 5 vehicles parking on the street, and that's where there again, voicing my concerns for parking issues.
Any other comments? Councillor Moat? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share the same concerns when it comes to parking, Councillor Niche. I just wanted to clarify the question that Councillor Thorkelson asked Mr. Krekic about the site development and some of the upgrades that are going to need to be done as part of this project, and I'm just wondering if you can clarify that those costs of those upgrades. I know the retaining wall would need to be, but the costs underneath the site development here, are those to be borne by the developer?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
If that back lane has to be upgraded, who will pay for that?
The upgrades that were identified in a site development section of page 41 are all going to be borne by the developer.
Councilor Niche?
Is that pavement or gravel?
That's gravel.
Other concerns or questions? So I'll just say one last piece here then. Someone once told me that Wiseman once said this could be something or nothing when it comes to things such as this, and I think where we're at as a city, I think we know that this church will most likely just end up sitting there for a really long time, and most likely, as Councillor Thorkelson suggested, become a derelict building. At this time, we do know we're about to experience a major population boom if an LNG decision goes through. The reality of what this is, if we trust the developer to actually follow through with what the proposal is, because that's also what this is too, it's some trust, that The only thing I disagree with the proposal was that the seniors are going to be living there while this is happening. I absolutely do not think that will be the case. This will be executives from camps. The bosses will be living here. They'll live there for about 4 to 6 years, most likely, during the development phase. And then that building will be vacant, and that is when seniors would probably be able to afford to live in a unit like that after they've recouped the cost. And then at that time, you would have probably a significantly lower rent than $2,500 a month per unit. So this is specifically tailored to executive suites. Other places have done it. If we don't do this, then somewhere else, some camp will build it, and we won't collect the tax revenue from it. And seeing as we've been having financial difficulties, it seems logical to me that this potentially could be something. We'll collect a good tax base from it. I don't want to pretend like it's going to be a seniors unit, because I don't believe it will be. I think it will be an executive unit, exactly what it's meant to be, for a 4 to 6 year period during development time. And then from that point forward, it would probably be used, since they're single units, for some sort of seniors housing, because that would be what it would be tailored for. So I've heard all the pros and cons. So for me, at this stage, it seems that making this something, increasing the tax base, densifying the community, and yes, there might be other issues for sure, and these are risks that we take as a council to make decisions. I personally feel in favor of this project. Councilor Niche?
So basically, you're saying that what the proponent is saying is a lie. So you're saying that he's not going to do seniors housing. So basically, you're agreeing with a liar, if that's the way you're putting it. I mean, I'm not. It's the way you've put that forward is you're saying that he is saying that he's going to do seniors housing, but you're not agreeing that he's going to do seniors housing. So that's where I get to the point where he has said that he was going to do seniors housing to us. He said he's done a mixed use to us. He said to the seniors at the senior center that he's going to do just for seniors. He said he's going to do every time you talk to the man, he's got a different story. To me, that's not the person that the city wants to do business with. That's Sunwave, that's Dan Venier and his job on the mill. So these are you have to be able to trust the people that you want to invest in your community. And I do not want to see that unit, after 5 or 6 years, after this man has made a whole bunch of money, put it up for sale, and then it turns into a boarding house, and there's nothing to do with seniors. That's seniors housing. I would love for seniors housing, but that's not what he's asking for. He's asking to rezone this essentially as a boarding house, and that's what we have to know. We need to make sure that the people we do business with are people that are honest people that are going to say what they say they're going to do.
So I will rebuttal that, just because. So I'm not saying I'm agreeing with a liar, nor am I suggesting that this man is lying. I don't see what my comment there inferred that. What I'm saying is that he will make it available for seniors. He has commented that, he has said that. What I'm saying, though, is that when I'm looking at the financial cost of a unit like that, unless there's some specifically tailored units that a rent that's reasonable for a senior, then most likely seniors will not choose to live in a unit like that at the rent cost that is suggested. So that being said, that doesn't mean he's lying. He probably will make it absolutely available to seniors. It's just which seniors will be able to pay the rent at which it's going to be allocated to. So I'm not saying that it's not going to be happening, that there might be some seniors who want to maybe sell their homes on Graham Avenue and move into a unit like that. That's absolutely the case, and the developer has made it clear that he will make it available. What I'm saying, though, is that my personal opinion on this matter, it does nothing to reflect on the developer, whether or not he's a liar or not, is that this unit is specifically designed for executive people who are going to come and work in a camp environment. That's why they're single people units. That doesn't mean that afterwards you're not going to have multi-families living in a place like that. This isn't a boarding house for some 18-year-old partiers who are going to go and run amok. This is specifically tailored for a certain demographic, and I believe it's something we should welcome in the community, and I just think that's a little bit too, stretching it too far, the limit that I would say I'm agreeing with a liar and not a liar. Like, I just don't think that's appropriate comment there, but I'll just say that. So, we could probably go on and on. I'm not sure if there's any further comments specifically for this.
Question.
Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, item 10B. Report from the city planner running application for development variance at 1433 India Avenue.
At the last meeting, I introduced the development variance permit.
Your microphone, Mr. Cricket.
At the last meeting, I introduced this development variance permit as our process requires. Public notification was issued the following day, and as at this meeting, we did not receive any comments either for or against. Essentially, development variance permit is to vary the front property setback, which is highlighted in your packages, reducing it from 6 meter to 3.7 meters, and legitimizing the existing encroachment, which will not change nor encumber the street with unreasonable clutter. Therefore, my recommendation is to proceed to approve the development variance permits.
Okay, so the recommendations that development variance permit application number DP 1509 be approved. Moved by Councilor Thorkelson, second by Councilor Morrow. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councilor Thorkelson.
I just wanted to say that's if we looked at the building right now, that's what its encroachment is? Okay.
Yes, it is. We're just legitimizing the existing, legal non-conforming.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 10C, report from the city planner, development permit for the multifamily development at 1433 India Avenue.
This is the last application that's part of this entire suite of applications. And I've essentially borrowed these drawings that are not necessary during the rezoning application, but are necessary for the development permit for our rezoning presentation, as they're much nicer and easier to view. This is about form and shape, and with these two documents, the proposed project complies to the multifamily development permit area design guidelines, and therefore supporting my recommendation.
Okay, recommendation that council approve development permit number 15-10. Moved by Councilor Ruhala. Second by Councilor Morrow. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
I just have something that we should probably get our heads around, not in tonight's meeting, but it's maybe something that staff can think about getting their heads around. If we wanted to hold somebody besides putting a cover, I know that you've told us before, but maybe we can have some kind of report. How could we, if we wanted to have more control over what the developments were like, besides just through zoning, so that how would we be able to control that to ensure that that type of establishment that was going to be, that the developer said was going to be built, is what we ended up with? So what kind of tools, what would our toolbox look like, so that we wouldn't be in such an unseemly discussion about whether you believe somebody or not, but whether we are actually, how we could actually guarantee that what we saw was what we were going to get. So maybe, I don't mean to have that discussion now, but I think it would be a really good idea, Mayor Brain, if we could get some kind of a toolbox so that we can know and we can ask the developer if they would agree with that in the future, a future developer.
Okay. I just want to make sure we stick to the items on the agenda. Maybe we can, if you want to have a conversation at the end, but just so we can get through. Item 10D, report from the city planner, application for development variance permit number at 990 Edward Avenue.
So the attached application is for variance to the building maximum height, and the result will be building which will exceed the City of Prince Rupert zoning bylaw maximum building height by 1.5 meters. This applicant owns a number of properties in this cul-de-sac, and it does pay dividends to talk about the previous applications in 2012 for the property at 1012 Edward Avenue, followed by a development permit application. This building was built, the DP 1311 in 2013 at 1002 was approved by the council. However, the applicant decided to move the same building to the next property, which is at 960 Edward Avenue. The property is located at the gully side of the project and of the street, and that consequently has little potential to obstruct anybody's view from this area here. This is the new housing start. That actually the plans that are here are prepared by the same designer that was responsible for preparing the design guidelines for the property, which are part of the covenant. So the covenant is included in your application, and it has certain form and shape that are not necessarily city's requirements, but there were requirements by a developer. Only to say that the developer has approved this design. These are the elevations of the house, but it's probably easier to converse on the pictures. It's essentially the same building, same design, not necessarily the window arrangement or the color that's going to be placed on this foundation right here, which is the property in question. At the last council meeting, following the last council meeting, we issued public notification to the neighbors. As at the time of this report, of course, you did not have any comments. I received 2 comments since I prepared this report. On Friday, April 24th, I received a comment from Bruno Bowman, Bruno and Ermi Bowman of 1469 11th Avenue East are in favor of the rezoning amendment. In a report, I alluded to the fact that I had received a telephone call from one of the neighbors who was concerned with the privacy, and this afternoon I received an email from the same person, which expands on the concerns, and I believe that you received copies of it. Have you received the copies of it? So I don't have to read it. She expands on the reason for this family specific comments that would essentially, in their opinion, decrease their privacy. All obligations have been met in conclusion for council to consider final approval.
Okay, so the recommendation is that the development variance permit application number DP-1504 for 990 Edward Avenue be approved. Moved by Councilor Misch, second by Councilor Cunningham. Discussion? Councilor Thorkelson?
Yeah, are these people right across the street?
By the
microphone, Mr. Cricket.
I apologize. By our conversation, as the address is not included on the email, 990 Edward, so it's right across the street. Make it short.
The reason I ask is that you know, I have been concerned about people building higher and higher and bigger houses, although, which is densification argument backwards, but these are meant to be single-family dwellings. And I am concerned that people would build houses and it would restrict other people's views, or that people would look in their window. That's exactly why I oppose the first one of these. The second one I didn't oppose because there was nobody who was worried about having their windows looked in. But that second one is the second one here. This will be the third we've done on this street, correct? Yeah. So the second one is I agreed because the house beside it already got the variance to increase, so their houses were going to be higher. But nobody across the street had a problem with it. This house now has a problem with it, and I don't know why they chose to move from a lot where they had a development variance permit into another lot like this. It says in our package that this person owned both the lots, so they got permission to put the taller house on one lot, and 2 years later have come to not built, and then 2 years later come to ask to put the taller house on the second lot where somebody else is now objecting. Now, I don't know how you do that, how many people get to object before you make a decision. Obviously, the last one we looked at, we had one person objecting, and I was in favor. This time, I have a bit of a concern that they could have built the taller house on the lot beside them, but they've decided to try to take that same plan and put it on the next lot. People are saying they don't want to have their windows looked into. So I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I think it deserves a discussion.
Councilor Mish? The only one thing that I could see as being partial negative would be maybe the low sun in the winter coming around, it could block the sun. But realistically, those people, if they really wanted to, and to kind of circumvent the whole system, all they would have to do is put a lower slope roof on the house, and they could basically build the exact same house with a lower slope roof and bypass you'd still be able to see in the window if that's the concern. They could basically build the same house with a lower slope roof and pass the current height requirement. So even if we did turn this down, they essentially could still build the same house anyway. So they do have a fairly high slope roof on them, so I can, I see where the extra height is coming from. So that's about the only thing I have to say.
Councilor Callahan?
I don't think they're building their house higher to be peeping Toms. If that's the only complaint is privacy, I don't know. Like, we've already approved it one lot up. This lot here is actually a little bit lower on the slope of the house or the street, and so it's not even going to be as high as the one that we've already approved, the roof line. And I just don't see that being a major concern, and we've already got one person approving it. I talked to somebody else that lives in the cul-de-sac, and they didn't come forward, but they had no problem with it. So I don't know. I don't see it being a problem, to tell you the truth.
Councilor O'Neill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another question these guys are raising is, like they say they already started building without the variance permit. So why they are in rush?
So this variance permit is for the height. It's not for the setbacks. If this variance permit was for the setbacks, meaning where you locate your foundation, then it would be stop order and work. But it being the height and location being static, essentially what Councilor Mish has said kind of stands true, that say, should the council decide against it, they can still execute the same building, but the desired roof line is not going to be at this peak here. And speaking to the sort of the relative locations of the elevation, there are 3 floors One is below, so you can't see it. It's a 1 foot 9 floor. Second floor is another foot. Third floor is another foot. And then the rest, so that's approximately 0.9 meters. So the other half is actually in a roof line.
Councilor Reish?
I understand why these people want to do it. I mean, as someone who builds stuff every day, nothing drives me more crazy than walking down into a basement of a house that's 7'6" and there's ducting hanging down and it's in your way. Someone wants to build an 8 or 9 or 10 foot ceiling. They're just doing it to allow them to put things like ducting and drop ceilings and stuff, and still having a normal height ceiling in their basement. So I can't fault someone for doing that. I just think it's kind of a no-brainer.
Other comments? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, any reports, questions, or inquiries from members of council? Okay, hearing none, I've got a recommendation or a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Cunningham, seconded by Councilor Reish. All those in favor? Okay, meeting is adjourned.